This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hello and welcome back to the Party Loaded podcast. It, of course, is Wednesday evening. We're hitting into the 13th of March now, and this, of course, at this time of month, is the only place to come for your one big hit of everything great in the world of video games. My name's Luke Ritalik. We're joined tonight, or I should say I'm joined tonight, by a trio of the other gentlemen members of the party. We have Mr. Matt Game Dad Diet, we have Christian Possum Brown, and we have Adrian Chia, introducing them all in a big heap. Let's see who talks first.
What's up, y'all?
Don't talk a big heat.
Nice. All right. Well, that played out exactly how I was hoping it would. Perfect. How you
Like
guys
the Three
doing?
Stooges trying to get through the doorway at the same time.
Shut
ahead. Yeah, I'm more of a chat ahead.
In fact, I could visualize that right now. You're all just mashing microphones with your faces in the same way. That's cool.
Yep.
Yep. So, how about them games, hey? Lots of stuff going on at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, like, looking at our list of things to cover tonight, we have quite the fuckload. So let's just get on with it. I think that's going to be the order of the day. I would like to kick off this week by following up with Christian, because Christian, you've had a bit of a thing going on at the moment where you're pumping out some smaller games in the wait between now and the release of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So
That's right.
How's that going?
Going good. So I finally wrapped up Link's Awakening, which I talked about the last couple of weeks. Love that game. And yep, still super excited to play the Switch one. My enthusiasm hasn't diminished. And then I picked up Celeste.
You could say it
after
hasn't
finishing
diminished, Capped.
Oh,
Ha 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 ha.
sorry. I have to pay that just on principle.
I should have just sandbagged it completely. No, so I started playing Celeste, which Luke, you actually got me as a Christmas present, I believe. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So listeners probably know maybe what Celeste is already, but for people who don't, it's like it's an indie game. It's a platformer, pixel art, and what I'd heard about it before I started playing it is that it had like really like impressive and tight platforming, and very skill-based platforming, which appeals to me greatly. And I'd heard that there was some like mental health angle to the story. And yeah, both of those things are definitely the case. The platforming is really stellar. The way the game is sort of structured, there's different. You're climbing a mountain. It's almost Journey-esque in its sort of setup, where there's just a mountain and you need to get to the top of it. And each stage kind of has its own unique platforming elements. So like one stage will have like disappearing blocks or something, or like bubbles you jump into and they shoot you out in a different direction, or just a different gimmick sort of for each step of the climb. And yeah, that like keeps it fresh. Like you never really get new generic upgrades to your character Madeline. Like you don't get like longer distance jumps or more running or anything like that, with one spoilery exception that I won't mention. But for the most part, your character remains the same. It's just the levels are changing. And yeah, it was really fun. It only took me like 6 hours to finish. There's a little bit more post-credits content that I could do, like collecting stuff, but I probably won't go and do that. The story itself didn't grab me too much. I can see, because it is like it does touch on some mental health issues, and there's a lot of sort of metaphor and like visual simile in the game, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the whole game is a metaphor.
Yeah, the whole thing's a metaphor. I can see how that totally would like some people would love that. People who relate to it very deeply. I thought it was sweet. It's quite sweet, touching in times, but I didn't kind of get enthralled by the emotions of the game. But no, it was still a really fun, solid experience. I am a bit shocked though that I do remember it getting some like 10 out of 10s, I think, from reviews.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a little too far, maybe. But everything's subjective, but I certainly wouldn't give it a 10.
I think GameSpot gave it a 10, if memory serves. That might have been one of the only big ones, unless Destructoid did as well. I'm not sure, but there was a couple of pretty high scores. Everything else was at least 9s, and I don't think it scored below an 8 in many places. But yeah. Like, one of the things that I remember from it, which kind of struck me as being really unique, was the modular elements to scaling back the difficulty and adding like handicaps and stuff. Did you muck around with any of that?
I didn't muck around with any of that, no. It's just...
Okay.
Yeah, nothing like that. So is that all like in the settings options, or does it prompt you if you die lots or something?
No, it's not so much like that. I would actually suggest you go back and have a look at it just for interest's sake. Like, I know that you're the sort of gamer with platformers where you just want to play it on like the default hard settings and not really rely on any of that kind of stuff. But I just thought it was really unique from a mechanical sense, and it was cool that people who aren't necessarily hardcore platformers could like remove elements of difficulty sort of piecemeal to kind of change the experience without it just being like a linear, easy, medium, hard kind of scale. So
that's neat.
Yeah, it's cool. I actually liken it a bit to Beat Saber, how Beat Saber has the modifiers where you can make things progressively harder or easier by changing individual mechanics as opposed to just ramping it up. Yeah.
I remember hearing that the platforming, like I was expecting it to be super brutal, like Super Meat Boy-esque at times, but it really wasn't. Like, there are a lot of areas where there's some trial and error. Like, I died a whole bunch of times because I'm figuring out like the optimum way. Oh, okay, I need to shoot myself this way, then that way, then that way. But that's kind of just like, once I figured out how to do any area, it was actually pretty easy. I still think in recent memory, Guacamelee actually has the hardest platforming I've experienced in a while.
All right. The first one or the second one?
I've only played the first one, so I think Adrian played the second one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Interesting. I found if you go for all the strawberries, that tends to make things a bit trickier, but yeah, absolutely.
True, yeah. I ended up with, I think, 120 of the 175.
Geez, that's pretty good.
Any that I saw, I got, but I didn't dig around too much for like the hidden out of the way ones. So
yeah, fair enough. Cool. All right, well, Adrian, how's a bit of that Warframe Nightwave going? How's that treating you?
What? Crackframe? Yes.
Yeah. Press the button, off he goes.
I have an interesting relationship with Warframe lately where I have sort of self-realized that maybe I need to start varying the games that I play. Because it's been probably 5 weeks or something and I haven't played anything but Warframe.
I do wonder if you're going to burn out at some point or if this is just like such a happy spot for you that it's not going to happen. Yeah.
I don't know. I am the kind of person that normally burns out on things, but it relates to this week in gaming, but there's the rate at which they release content kind of keeps that treadmill pretty steadily sated. So so what they've with the release of a new Warframe called Hildren, they have released a new community event called Buried Debts, and this is sort of the kind of community event where all players work toward common goals, and as those numbers rack up, you collectively as a community unlock different milestones and earn certain rewards. And just prior to Buried Debts going live, there was also the release of the new Nightwave system. So for those unfamiliar with Warframe, as you work through the game and you play through what's called the star map and unlock missions and work through the story mode of the game, you also have what used to be called alerts, which would pop up on your HUD. And usually there was maybe 3 to 5 alerts running at any given time. And these were usually just one-off missions, sometimes with a different set of objectives that would give you a reward. And these were usually the way that you would farm particular resources that weren't available any other way. And that's the way people did it for ages. I'm not sure when the alert system started, but I know that it's just recently
like public
ended.
events, but the mission-based public events as opposed to just
kind
out in the
of.
open.
Yeah, and most of them could be done solo as well. It wasn't too often that you would need to pair up or get into a squad to complete alert missions. But anyway, that they've done away with that and they've replaced it instead with what's called Nightwave. And it's interesting, if not familiar. And the way it works is every 6 days, a new set of objectives are released on by the Nightwave commentator. So it already existed in the game that there was a little radio tuner on your ship that you could turn off or turn on. Most people turned it off because they found it annoying. But there was a woman on the radio who would talk about things going on around the solar system. The Nightwave system sort of bumped her up to a more sort of prominent character, and she is now this kind of like dusky noir radio presenter who talks about current missions that are currently going around in the solar system. And through the Nightwave system, you have probably, let's say, about 12 different objectives that you can complete at your leisure through the course of a week. Mm-hmm. And these objectives are worth a certain amount of influence. Once you earn that influence, you can then rank up with the Nightwave vendor and buy items or earn rewards just by ranking up. So it's similar to the kind of system you see in Destiny or other looter games like that, where you earn reputation, then use that reputation to buy items, etc. So it's basically just Warframe sort of implementing that kind of system. And instead of having to rely on random alert missions in the past to get specific resources, you can now instead do these Nightwave objectives, earn the credits, and buy the specific resources that you need from the store. So it just sort of gives you a little bit more control, while it still sort of adds a bit of a lengthy grind to the game, which is good. And so that's basically what I've been doing. I've been enjoying that. And the Buried Debts community event that's currently going, like I said, that is linked to a new Warframe that's being released. So there is certain objectives, and once they're met, it unlocks a new boss fight on one particular area of the game, and by farming that boss, you can earn the parts to build this new Warframe Hildren that's been released. So nice. That's what's happening in Warframe, and I'm enjoying it as usual.
Have you attempted to get all the parts for the frame yet, or is that going to be later on?
It's currently not open yet, so people are still, as a community, working towards the goal of unlocking the boss fight that will then prompt the farming for that character.
Gotcha. I imagine that'll be quite popular after that point.
Yeah, I must say I have dived far more in the last couple of weeks into both of the areas of Warframe that are the open world systems of the game. And now have like a far greater understanding of how they function and things you can do. And it just goes to show that, once again, once you turn your attention towards a new area of Warframe, it opens up a whole new area that you hadn't experienced before. So that's always fun. That's probably what keeps me coming back.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yep. That sounds good. I'm yet to dive in, but I'm looking forward to getting some time to do that somehow in the next few weeks. I got no idea how that's going to happen. Man, all right, speaking of diving in deep, Matt, it is time. Are you ready?
Nobody expects the Praxic Inquisition.
All right, kick it off, man. What's going on?
Yes. Yeah, so we've been playing Destiny 2.
Fuck yes, we have.
On different platforms, but I've been playing a lot of Destiny 2 on PS4.
Yeah, we've been sharing thoughts a little bit along the way. It's been fun. It's been good. Yeah.
It's been really good. The literally just today, for us, basically, they released the next bit of content for Season of the Drifter, which has the loyalty missions. So I have started my loyalty mission for the Vanguard. You can boo me now.
Yeah, I'm not going to boo you, but I'm not going to be choosing that. I'm going to be siding with the Drifter. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
That lovable scamp.
That's why you can boo me. I got to say, the story is super interesting. Like, I've seen a couple of people making the comparisons between the choice between the Drifter and Orna, the Praxic Warlock, as kind of being the choice between the right wrong or the wrong right. That's
a good way to put it, actually.
Yeah, and I really, really like that. But yeah, no, I've decided to go with Orna. But yeah, thinking about it, it's only been a week since the Season of the Drifter started, and I hadn't actually really talked about it before, and there's been a lot of stuff to cover in there. Like, my character, when I started out, was like 540, 550 light level, and to do Season of the Drifter content, I needed to be 640, 650 plus. But they added in some new bounties that literally within 2 hours, I had got my character from 550-ish to 640, basically.
Those power surge bounties are by far the smartest thing they have done with this new season of content. Because holy shit, getting people back into it, absolute masterstroke. And I will say as well, one thing it's prompted me to think about, which I didn't consider before, is actually leveling out some alts as well, because you can easily power surge them up to the same state as well. So
yeah, because I've got my Titan who still hasn't gone through the Forsaken content yet, but now with those bounties in there, I have every reason to go through and do them. And the great thing about it is that, like, really interestingly, the content at 640, 650, there was the Black Armory season that they had, and that content is still beneficial to do because you still get really good weapons and such out of it. So I haven't technically skipped over that content. I'm still getting stuff out of it. I'm still completing those stories and everything there. And it's just become a part of the routine that I do every week now when I go and log into Destiny 2.
Means you can jump in and do the new raid now as well, because you're at an appropriate level to do that. So
yeah, exactly. Like we've got and with people all coming back because you now have those catch-up bounties, we actually have a group big enough to go and do the raid, which is awesome. Like we haven't actually had that since the game first came out. But yeah, I think, well, actually, no, I can't not talk about Season of the Drifter without talking about Gambit Prime.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so good. Like, it feels like old school Destiny raiding meets PvP, and that's amazing. Like, it's such a good combo, because those are two good things in Destiny that felt like you could never quite make them fit together, but now they've got to mash them together, and it just works so well. Like, the boss fights aren't quite as dramatic as raiding, but they feel like you need to actually organize a team, and then you throw in the PvP side with invaders suddenly coming in and ruining your day, and it's super interesting. Like, it's really exciting. It's everybody has a role in there. It feels like you win best when everybody plays a certain role in there.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at building myself a Sentinel set. I think is a Sentinel or Sentry, one or the other.
Sentry. I think the yellow one.
Yeah, the yellow one.
So there's Sentry, which is the yellow ones, which is sort of, guarding your sort of drop point and any big enemies that spawn there, including the big boss. You kind of tasked with focusing on taking those out. You've got the Collector set, which is the ones that run around and grab all of the motes, which are designed to sort of win. You've got the Invader set, which are the ones that sort of jump through the portal and do the PvP against the other team. And then you've got the Reaper set, which are the ones that focus more on defeating all of the mobs that are spawning around the place to spawn the motes. So, it's a great sort of set of roles. And the fact that now you've got these armor sets that you can grind for, which actually visually makes you stand out as focusing on those roles, is an absolute masterstroke. I think it's so clever.
Yeah.
So,
But I'll talk about it more as part of our topic tonight. But I think it's really, really interesting how when the patch first came out, there was only a single Gambit Prime map to play on. But with today's patch and the new content they've added, there's a second Gambit Prime map they've added, and it's actually tied into the story that you end out playing out as part of your loyalty mission.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it actually explains why this is now a map that we can play on. To an extent, like basically the drifters off doing stuff on Titan to make that map available for Gambit Prime. It's really interesting. I'm really, really excited and fascinated by the way that they're actually blending the story in with every other gameplay element now. I find that super cool. And I'm starting to realize that there's a theme in Destiny 2's storyline since the very start now, especially with Forsaken. But it's become really clear that there's kind of like this overarching theme of what does it mean to be a Guardian.
Yeah.
And it feels like you could be super ham-fisted with that, but this season of the Drifter is so interesting. Like, it feels like the sort of thing where you could sit down and have a really hearty debate with other players of the game about whether or not it's right to side with the Drifter. Because it's not so black and white all of a sudden.
I agree. I think the Drifter is a very interesting character, and the way that he portrays himself and like even the voice acting, I think is great. And I hope that dude sticks around for quite a while in Destiny, because he's one of the more interesting parts about it at the moment. And look, everything that's happening at the moment, you got to think there's some groundwork being laid for Destiny 3. There is no doubt in my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I find it really, really fascinating. Like, we're learning about stuff that's only been, like, external lore. Like, the Praxic Warlocks and everything were very much the sort of thing you only really read about, and now they're a major part of the game.
Yep.
I would have preferred it if, like, Orna was actually a character we interacted with and heard voice acting from and everything, because I think that does kind of downplay her importance in this role that she's playing right now. But it's so, it's really fascinating how they kind of, it feels like they're building up to something, and I'm very excited for where it's going to go. I will have no doubt, like, this will be known as Season of Civil War is basically what it's going to become.
Totally.
It feels like the choice between Cap and Iron Man.
Yeah, no,
really
I get the exact same feel, actually. It is definitely a lot like that right now. Yeah. Look, I mean, Orna may show up in the next season later in the year, the Season of Opulence. So we're starting to hear a little bit about that now. But like, I kind of don't care about that yet because Season of the Drifter is still so goddamn fun. So, yeah.
It's really good. Destiny's got its hooks back into me, so...
I've been thinking all this week that, like, I love Warframe 2, and I fucking wish Warframe had a Gambit equivalent, because holy shit, that'd be fun in that game. Yeah. So...
Yeah.
Like a PvE sort of game mode for, like, a particular event type. I just think in Warframe that would actually also work super well, so... but yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day. Maybe they'll...
People don't like fighting each other in Warframe.
People don't what, sorry?
They don't like fighting each other. They added the PvP system, Lunaro, and then like nobody played it.
Well, it's the thing about Gambit, like the actual PvP element is probably by far the smallest element. It is mostly PvE just on a clock. The PvP element is mostly a disruption sort of strategy as opposed to like the core of it. So... Yeah.
I think mechanically, Warframe the shooting mechanics just function a bit too differently for it to kind of work the same way. I think there's sort of
the movement as well.
Yeah,
it's so fast.
Yeah, the movement's a huge part of it. But because Warframe is much more Diablo-esque in its combat, you're like killing waves and waves of large amounts of enemies. So I just think it's more of a speedy kind of game. So I don't think. I'm sure they could make something similar, but it wouldn't. I don't know if it would recreate the same kind of magic you guys are probably used to.
No, I think it'd be something that'd bank on the mobility a bit more, so they could probably spread it out over a larger area. But I guess what I'm getting at is that for people like me, who are generally pretty shit at PvP, like the PvE element of it really keeps me coming back over and over and over again because it's fun as hell. Like, yeah. But
cool. and like you can focus on that PvE element and feel like you're still, doing something good, right? Like, because I hate Crucible. I'm not bad at it, but I hate playing it. But that works well for me in Gambit because of the fact that I can be a sentry and do that thing where, hey, I'm going to actually, fight the monsters and everything. But when another player turns up, I am going to turn my attention on them.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like, it feels really, really good. And it's unique as well. Like, I can't think of another game that has quite done a Gambit Prime style combat. Like,
no.
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning too, there's a few mechanical differences between Gambit and Gambit Prime, but the biggest one is that Gambit's usually best of 3 and Prime is a single match. So I find that Prime's a lot better for just getting in and out of quickly as a fast event and, not committing as much time to, which is great. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, man, Destiny 2, fucking still good. All right. I want to talk about Devil May Cry 5 because holy fucking shit, this game is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been looking forward to talking about this all week. I gotta say, Cap God is back. Capcom are on an absolute tear at the moment. They're kicking some ass. The two favorite games that I've had so far this year are both Capcom titles. We're in 2019. What fucking year are we in? Holy crap. So, yeah, all right. Devil May Cry 5. Now, I haven't played a Devil May Cry 5 game before this. Like, this is actually my first one. So I'm coming in full fresh. Fortunately, they actually do have a option to do like a short sort of video to recap the story up until this point. It's not a fully animated cutscene video. It's a bit of a vignette kind of thing. But I feel it does a pretty good job of recapping the story without needing to sort of dive into hours and hours of YouTube content. So that's a good starting point. Look, honestly, the story's not hard to pick up. You're a cool dude using over-the-top weapons and attacks to stop a demon invasion. And you have two other cool dudes that you interchange between and, fight with. And, like, honestly, the story, while fun, is certainly not the draw of this game. It is just wacky, zany ridiculousness on a amped-up level, unheard of, and it's fun as shit. So, the three main characters that you've got Dante, of course, who's the main protagonist from many of the previous Devil May Cry games. Who is kind of like he's the seminal sort of demon hunter. He has a range of different weapons that he can use in the game. And when you switch between, he's got different attack stances as well. So when you switch between them, you've got a huge range of different ways that you can fight the demon hordes. And I think that it could actually be said that he might be one of the most versatile characters in an action fighting game like this that I have ever seen, because he's got so many special moves and ways you can use those different stances. It's insane.
Definitely true, I reckon.
Yeah, yeah. There's heaps. You've also got Nero, who's the more recent protagonist from, I think, DMC 4. And he's kind of the slightly more sort of young punkish goth sort of kid who has, like, he actually had a demon arm from a previous game, and something happens at the beginning of this one where he loses the arm, and then for the rest of the game he basically has like a robotic attachment, like a detachable sort of mechanized arm that you can keep swapping in and out with different types of arms as well, and it's called your Devil Breaker. And that forms a big mechanic with what he can do, because you can literally run around with him, and he uses his arm like a hook shot grappling hook, and you can drag enemies towards you, drag yourself towards enemies. You're running around sort of firing a pistol, swinging with your sword. His sword, the handle on his sword is like a motorcycle accelerator handle. So you can crank it and the sword lights up with power before you run in and start swinging with it. It's the ridiculous. This is awesome. And then the third character, which I think might actually be my funnest one to play because he's really unique, is named V. And Matt, I got to say, gender aside, very, very similar to the V that we know. In look.
That's good.
Yeah. V is more of a summoner type, and actually has an affinity for summoning a couple of different types of demons. So he runs around and basically he reads dark poetry from a book that he carries around with him. And you summon these demon creatures to run in and do battle for you. So you've got like this cat called Shadow, which is like a panther or a puma. You've got a demon bird, which is called Griffin. And then you've got this gigantic demon monster you can summon as well, which I forget the name of it. It's like this big Goliath type thing, which is kind of like your power attack, which is on a cooldown meter. Not cooldown meter. It's kind of like a pump up sort of power meter. But yeah, one of them attacks at close range with speed. The bird sort of flies around and drops lightning bolts, and the big Goliath thing just destroys everything within range. But V as a character is actually designed to jump in and do the finishing blow, because none of your creatures can actually kill things outright. They can just take them down to their weakest point, and then you run in with V and actually land the killing hit with his walking cane, of all things. And that's how it works. But he flips around and all your creatures are running around doing stuff, and it's just chaos everywhere. But holy shit, it's fun. It is just ridiculous. And then when you want to like back off for a second and power up some of your moods, he pulls out his book of dark poetry and starts reading from it as like a recharge thing, which is just all kinds of ridiculous. And some of the stuff that he actually says out of it is just hilarious. So but yeah, you're running around killing swarms of demons. Like, a big part of the story is that there's these huge demonic trees that have started to take over this city, which I think is called Redgrave City. And basically you have to get down to the literal root of the evil and try and, pull it out by defeating these huge demon bosses that are at the side of each sort of big growth. But there's some dark themes in this game. Like, the citizens that actually got hit when this sort of demonic growth erupted out of the foundation of the city, they literally get like almost like Avengers Infinity War style dusted, but it's like they get turned into this weird kind of ash plant matter, which kind of just collapses, and then there's this plant stuff that sort of is left behind. It's weird, it's dark, it's gross, but I kind of love it. So, and you've got a side character whose name is Nico, and she's like, your typical sort of Japanese, slightly over-sexualized mechanic character, but she's very hick. Like, she's super, super redneck, and she's kind of like your artificer. She drives the van around. You can actually find these phone booths throughout the various different levels, and if you find a phone booth, you have a chance of being able to call her up, and then she suddenly just drives her van in from the most ridiculous places, like smashing in through roofs or flying in through windows with this giant sort of van, and it's over the top awesome. But every single level in this game has a intro and an outro cutscene, and it's fully animated like the whole way through. Like, the level of craftsmanship on the cutscenes alone makes this game worth playing for that part, because it looks immaculate. And talking about the cutscenes, I shared something with you guys earlier today that I think is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a video game. So I think it must be the special edition of this game, they've actually got alternate sort of versions of all of the main cutscenes in the game that are actually acted out in live action by the cast and crew behind the game. So you can actually see all of the dev team like in live action running around and doing all the moves and stuff with really bad CG over the top of it, showing some of the elements that they haven't quite sort of built in yet. And it's the funniest shit. It is so hilarious.
Yeah, you have to see it to appreciate just how hilarious it is.
Oh, it's ridiculous, man. This game does not take itself too seriously. Like, it's things like that. There is this one cutscene near the beginning, which I just have to mention as well, where Nico sort of drives in with the van and you've got Nero sort of sitting in the passenger seat. You see a heap of demons up in the distance. So she basically, instead of slamming the brakes on, she pumps the gas and then deliberately like turns the van on its side so that it basically gets air and starts to flip. Now, Nero jumps out of the window. He hand-to-hand kills like a whole bunch of demons while the van's flipping, sort of in slow motion. The whole time the van's flipping in slow motion, Nico inside the van is trying to put her mouth on a cigarette that's flying through the air while a whole pack of cigarettes have sort of exploded over the cabin while, Nero's killing all these demons. And then when the scene finally comes to a close, she's finally got the cigarette in her mouth. The van lands. Nero jumps back in through the window and it ends with him basically offering her a light. And the van is drenched with blood. There's ichor everywhere. Huge amount of violence in the scene. And the last thing you see as the scene wraps up is a message down the bottom saying, "Cigarettes are harmful to your health. We do not recommend smoking," or something along those lines. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Oh my God, I was laughing out loud. It was the funniest thing. So yeah, that's a good summary of how this game is. Like, it's just ridiculous, but it's the scene by scene gameplay is fun as hell. Like, there are very few sort of action paced sort of brawler games like this that I've played in recent history that I've enjoyed as much as this. It is just great. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it to anyone who likes these sorts of games. You will not be disappointed. Just go in with a sense of humor, is what I'm saying.
Luke, it's truth time. How many S ranks have you got?
I've got a triple S rank, motherfucker. So,
oh, nice. Okay.
Yep, I did. I got a triple S rank on my last mission with V. I have noticed that with V, it seems to be a bit easier to get S ranks, but I've got a bunch of S's. I've got a couple of doubles. There's some hidden levels as well, which I've been really trying to grind on one of them to get an S rank, but it's super hard because you're on a clock and you have to kill a certain amount of demons before the clock runs out. But yeah, no, I'm not doing too badly.
Cool.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah. That's Devil May Cry 5. You should play it. Christian, I think you should play it.
I've been watching a Let's Play of it. I probably will play it at some point, but not yet.
No, that's fine. You can play it full. Yeah.
I've been holding off on watching any sort of Let's Plays of it because I am actually really interested in playing. Because I love that kind of just over-the-top ridiculous game. Like,
yeah,
it super interests me.
Yeah. Oh,
it's Sekiro that's holding me back because I know that like even 1 week, 1.5 weeks, that's not enough time for me to play Devil May Cry 5 to my satisfaction. So,
totally. And it's not like it's a spoiler type game that you can't afford to play a bit later and enjoy when you've got more time to enjoy it properly. So yeah, no, I totally agree. You should hold off and play it properly. Cool. Anyway, that's a whole bunch of recent gaming. Let's flip the switch and get into chatting about some cool gaming news.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Speaking of the Switch, and thank you for setting me up with that.
That was
Luke.
actually an entirely accidental segue, but you should take it.
So, like in the out of nowhere via Twitter, Nintendo announced the latest Labo kits, and this time they're doing a Labo VR kit, which was super interesting. And so it's coming out really soon too. It's coming out April 12th. And so people have been speculating for a little while, like, oh, is Nintendo going to do anything VR related? And there's a bit of controversy once where Reggie said something kind of dismissive of VR at one point. But it seems like they are definitely interested in doing VR. Being a Labo set, it is kind of, baby's first VR, but that's what you'd expect from a Labo set because it is for young kids. And the images have shown off the kind of 5 sort of stock cardboard frames that you'll build for Labo VR. And there's like an elephant and a bird and a gun and a camera and like some space goggles or something. And you can kind of infer from the images what each activity will be, and they're all probably going to be something pretty basic. The gun one looks just like it'll probably be Super Scope from the NES, if anyone remembers that. And yeah, I mean, it looks fun. All of them do feature the kids holding the switches up to their face, like holding the VR set. So none of them are like hands-free experiences. So that kind of shows one of the limitations of having VR on the Switch. I think that'd be partly because the Switch is kind of so heavy itself that strapping it to your head would be impractical, and also because in order for it to function, you need to have the Joy-Cons to detect the range of motion and everything. So if you've got the Joy-Cons in the headset, you can't be holding them to do anything. So it's a bit of limitation there, but it's still really cool Nintendo's doing it. So
that being said, some of the things have the Joy-Cons disconnected as part of the cardboard creations that are sort of part of the apparatus on your head. So it's not like they're always connected.
No, but you can see what they would be doing. So like the elephant one, for example, one of the Joy-Cons is at the end of the trunk and one of them's in the middle of the trunk. And then there's like pencil markings around as part of the artwork. So you'll be using the trunk to probably like paint or draw, like, you know, people get elephants to do in zoos sometimes. But you won't be like holding the Joy-Cons doing anything with them. It's still part of the Labo kit.
Yeah, so I mean, these games would have to be short because holding that thing up to your face for a while, I think kids have weak arms. They're not going to be able to do that for too long. That's asking a bit much. They're little
experiences. They won't be full games. Like the bird one is probably just flying around with some birds, having a look at some birds. And
no. The bird one, and I got to point this out. You are looking up the bird's butt. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did. That's a bit strange.
Yeah. It's so weird. So
you are indeed.
Hey man,
this
is what the kids want nowadays.
We're going to have the next generation of Nintendo fans, coming from this younger sort of child generation we've got coming through at the moment, are going to have fascinations with birds' rectal cavities, and they're also going to be built like stacked because they're going to be so thick from the amount of weight they're lifting on their arms. So it's going to be weird.
Oh my god! Honestly, I think it's really unfortunate that the headset isn't hands-free because I was looking forward to Beat Saber with cardboard shipping tubes. Like that would have been great.
Well, I mean, the Labo VR stuff apparently is still going to have the Toy-Con Garage sort of software element, so you will be able to sort of create your own cardboard sort of kits and use the controllers in different ways. So maybe someone will attempt it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make it work by just laying flat on your face on the floor with the headset held up against your face and just flailing your arms around, right?
Or maybe they'll change it later. Beat Saber, it'll be like Headbutt Saber or something like that.
Just lots of masking tape. Just wrap it around, layers and layers and layers. No problem.
Oh god! All right. So, in some other news about interesting announcements, the Halo Master Chief Collection is coming to PC. And I am so excited. I've waited for 13 years to get Halo 3 on PC. And now it's here.
I'm actually a bit excited too.
Yeah.
Because we had our blind spot conversation the other day and a couple of us mentioned Halo, so this is perfect.
Yeah, well, Halo's on my list for sure. So this is going to be a day one purchase for me, I think. So,
But they're also extending out what the Master Chief Collection covers. So they're adding Halo Reach, and Halo Reach is actually getting remaster as part of this whole thing. And that's probably actually the biggest news out of this. Like, they're not just re-releasing Reach on PC, it's also actually getting upgraded graphics and everything for the PC release. And all of the games are going to release in chronological order, so they won't be all out at once. They will be releasing Reach, then Halo 1, 2, maybe ODST at that point, 3, and then 4.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really cool idea. But if you're listening and you're planning on getting it, my suggestion is you actually get it on the Microsoft Store and not via Steam, because if you have an Xbox One, you will get the Xbox One copy as well if you buy it on the Microsoft Store.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So
vice
if you buy it on
versa,
Steam,
if you have the Xbox One copy, you get the Windows one automatically?
I would imagine so, yeah, because, I mean, it is just the Halo Master Chief Collection. So, they've got that whole Windows as a service thing, yeah.
Man, I was going to say question time. So I have committed to playing Halo Reach in the near future as part of my blind spot therapy. So I own Halo Reach on 360 already. Should I play it with the copy I've got, or should I wait for this? What do you think?
I would be very interested in seeing what exactly they're planning on doing in terms of the remaster. I don't think it will be quite the same experience because, playing Destiny 2 on PC compared to consoles is a very, very different experience. Like, very surprisingly different. So it depends on what sort of experience you want to have. If you want the classic experience, then the 360 copy is worth booting up. But there's a whole lot of stuff in there that's like, we've moved past that. Like a lot of it feels like really muddy textures and weird aspect ratio kind of looking issues about the game. It might be worth waiting for the PC release. And then you can always buy it on the Microsoft Store and still be able to play it on Xbox One and at least compare between the two if you wanted to. So.
Yeah, that's true. I don't actually even know if my 360 disc is backwards compatible on the Xbox One. I assume it might be.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely can confirm it is.
Oh, sweet.
And not only is it backwards compatible, but if you actually played the game back then and you had a character, it imports your multiplayer character with all the gear you unlocked. It's super impressive.
Oh, sick. Okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's absolutely worth doing.
Something that doesn't sound good is some news today that Sega have halted shipments and sales of Judgment, the game from the Yakuza team, because one of the actors in the game was arrested for some drug-related charges, cocaine possession, I think.
Yeah, very small amount.
And Japan is super strict on drugs. They've actually stopped shipments, and they've even deleted all their tweets mentioning the game, which is pretty crazy. It's something that you think, it would cause controversy, but to actually take these drastic measures, is pretty crazy. They have announced that they will have some news on. The Wall Street Journal has reported that they're currently Sega's in meetings discussing what to do at the moment, and what to do regarding the Western release of the game. My prediction would be that I think they will delay the Western release and possibly even recast the character. They have done that before. So when they re-released Yakuza 4 this year in Japan, one of the 4 main protagonists had actually been, the actor had been recast because that actor had also been caught up in some drug shenanigans. So they have done it before, so I think they'll probably do it again, which is, pretty stupid.
That's
in my opinion.
nuts. Yeah, I mean, what do they do when a game's already sort of shipped and is out and, in the wild, effectively? Do they stop producing it after that point and then recast then, even though they've already sold the vast majority of the copies? That's just, man, it's such a weird Japanese thing.
I reckon it's a very Japanese thing. I reckon they might, obviously they're not going to do anything about the games that are already out there, but they'll probably take some time off, recast that actor, and then do a patch to change it in everyone's game, and then change it permanently in new shipments. But that I might be way off the mark. They might come out of the meeting or whatever and say, we're just going to leave it. But doesn't seem like it.
It actually got me thinking about drug use in the Yakuza games, and the more I thought about it, the more I realised that no, there actually isn't. Despite all the crime family stuff that's in those games, I don't actually recall there being any drug stuff at all. So,
I was going to say they might just pull a Poochie and say his home planet needs him and evacuate him out of the game.
Yeah, I think they'd have to be on drugs to make that call, but sure.
All right, well, in keeping in the theme with this next news item, I'm going to tease that there is a news item and then not talk about it until next week.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Well, there you go.
No, so there's been a Borderlands 3 tease, and there's not much to talk about with it. Basically, they showed off an image on the Gearbox social media channels that basically is very clearly from inside the Borderlands universe that says March 28, Boston, MA, which is obviously when PAX East is going on and where PAX East is going on. They have a panel that they're going to be talking about announcements and behind-the-scenes looks inside of Gearbox Software and Gearbox Publishing and a couple of different games that they're working on, including Borderlands. So whether or not it's a Borderlands 3 announcement or a tease of a tease, which a lot of companies have been doing lately, we don't know yet. But, fingers crossed there is actually a Borderlands 3 announcement. That'd be pretty good. So...
What kind of game is Borderlands 3 going to look like, though? That's the big question. Actually, no, I've got a second big question. Are they actually going to roll out Randy Pitchford on stage after some of the recent controversies?
I doubt it.
Probably not. No.
No. So for anyone who missed it, he was involved in a bit of a scandal involving a USB sort of flash drive left in a restaurant somewhere. That
medieval times.
Yeah, it contained private, sensitive company information and a bunch of porn. So yeah,
And allegedly underage porn, child porn.
yes.
But yeah, that seems to be like that's in the courts at the moment as to whether that is the case or whether that was just sort of slanderous. But doesn't sound good.
Look, I would actually kind of like. I think this would be kind of amusing. Gearbox have done some weird sort of prezos before, and I believe at one PAX they actually sort of gave everybody in the audience a copy of the new game they had out at the time. I think it would have been like what was that game they released around the same time as Overwatch?
Battleborn?
Battleborn, yeah. They gave everybody in the audience a copy of Battleborn and I think some free pizza or something like that. I reckon they should just lean into that history. And then at this event, if they're going to reveal Borderlands 3, they should give everybody a copy of a demo level of Borderlands 3, but issue it to everybody in the audience on a zip drive or a flash drive.
If it's not underage stuff, then that like in the real life thing, then that's funny. But
yeah. All right. Anyway, leaving that behind, we'll see what we'll see. There's definitely some big questions there, but I don't know. I don't trust
Randy
Gearbox.
Pitchford left that USB behind.
Yeah. Who knows? All right. Well, okay. So speaking of magicians, because Randy Pitchford sort of feels that he is a bit of a magician, we also have a new game sort of that's been talked about quite a bit this week, which is the new mobile Harry Potter Wizards Unite game that's coming out from Niantic, the creators of Ingress and Pokemon Go. So this is the new Harry Potter themed ARG, which is going to sort of put you in the real world with a Wizarding World sort of overlay, running around and capturing various creatures. So now it's not going to follow, strictly speaking, the traditional Harry Potter stuff that we know about, like with Ron and Hermione and Harry actually appearing in game. From what we can tell, you're basically going to be walking around in the world. The theme is that a calamity has befallen the Wizarding World. It's caused artifacts and creatures and people and all sorts of stuff to just mysteriously appear out in the real world, the Muggle world. And you have to come together to solve the mystery of what is going on with the whole thing and actually find all of these things and return them to their rightful place and keep them safe from the eyes of the Muggles. So that kind of leans into the whole collectible nature of whatever you're going to be running around and capturing. There is going to be a bit of a puzzle element from what we've seen about how you use the spells and actually capture things. So it looks like you might actually have to wave like a wand in various different directions to sort of cast different types of spells or something like that. It's all kind of interesting and weird, but there's some pretty decent sort of buzz going around about it at the moment. Like it seems like there's actually some interesting takes on the ARG formula without just retreading the exact same ground as Pokemon Go. So I don't know. I mean, I personally probably don't have room in my day for another one of these kind of things, but I'm curious at the very least. What do you guys think?
I haven't seen all the material for this game, like if it's done trailers and stuff. Does it show people like waving their phones like they're wands? Does that seem to be a thing?
I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, the impression I've got is that it's tracing lines on the screen.
Yep.
Oh, because I want if it's like uses the gyro to wave your phone, that'd be cool. But
yeah, I don't mean it could be both.
My take on it is like Niantic, please, like don't pull a Telltale and just keep on remaking the same game over and over again with a different skin. Please don't do that. Like the fact that this is, they could have done a really interesting Harry Potter ARG that that type of game that was not just pulling the similar mechanics. Like the fact that there's a capturing thing in there, I find really, really silly. Like,
yeah, that's lame. I didn't know that.
I'm that makes me really disinterested. Like, okay, well, if I want to play the Harry Potter game and get a sense for what it's like, I can probably just play Pokemon Go. But if they had, I can think of so many interesting ways they could have done something in that universe that wasn't just rehashing a lot of the similar mechanics from Pokemon Go. Like, it's clearly a successful formula and they want to make sure it is successful, but I don't know, like, unless they have some really big things they're doing differently from Pokemon Go, I'm just completely disinterested.
Yeah.
I think Pokemon Go is such, I remember Christian describing it once as a true phenomenon. It's going to be hard to capture any kind of magic, ironically, in the same way that Pokemon Go did, I think, with this game. I think it's the kind of thing that probably, while Pokemon Go was out, sounded like an amazing idea, but like all things, interest is fleeting, so I'd be surprised if it truly takes off. Yeah. But who knows? Harry Potter is extremely popular, maybe even more so than Pokemon, really. So perhaps the sheer popularity.
It's 15 minutes, sure.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so totally on the spot. Like, I can think of a really cool mechanic where, okay, it's illegal in the wizarding world to go out and actually do magic. And so you pick a side when you actually join, whether you're going to be a rogue wizard or you're going to be a wizard hunter, essentially. And you start walking around looking for other players, and you have, NPCs and such pop up that you're essentially capturing. But then you can have a PvP mechanic in there and everything. You're not catching Pokemon, you're hunting down rogue wizards, and you could go and wave your phone around and shit. Like, that sounds way more interesting to me than just we basically rehashed Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to make a game that actually brings that shows where other players are or tracks other players.
Yeah, that'd be dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially with the age demographic of Harry Potter. I can't imagine people would feel very
But there's plenty of stuff you can do. Even for me, even if it wasn't capturing magical monsters or whatever, but it was you have all of your classes for Hogwarts and you need to collect ingredients or do missions for the different teachers for each class. That'd be cool. Capturing
learn
magical MacGuffins.
From what I saw from a couple of screenshots, there was a little mini game that I saw where you have to fight off a Dementor that's attacking a Quidditch player, and so the little sort of AR encounter appears sort of wherever you're pointing your phone, and then you have to trace patterns in the air to make the Dementor flee away from whoever it's attacking. So I get the feeling it might be more like an AR mini game kind of collection. I'll definitely try it. Yeah, with some collecting involved as well.
Yeah. Well, if it's a free game, we can all give it a go and just see. It'll be interesting at least.
The most important thing is how robust is the sorting hat going to be?
Yeah.
Isn't there actually another mobile game that you actually get to play as a character, and it is more just a mobile game rather than an augmented reality thing? I can't remember.
Harry Potter? Yeah. It's a really badly monetized one, though, from what I understand. It's more of a RPG. It came out last year, if memory serves.
You know what's totally going to happen is it's going to sort you into a house, and then a couple of years from now, you're going to be able to pay to change your house.
Fuck no, I hope not. That breaks all the kind of rules. Yeah. I would if it does do the house sorting thing, it would make a lot of sense if it actually synced up with a site like Pottermore, so that whatever you've rolled as your house on there is actually consistent the whole way through, so you can't suddenly have a different one on one site.
Well, the game, there is info about the game on Pottermore, so that link may not be so
tenuous. Yeah,
it might happen. Yeah, it might actually happen. Yeah,
cool. All right. Well, anyway, we'll wait and see. I know there's another ARG game that sort of came out last year and bombed a bit, which was the Ghostbusters one, and that largely bombed because they were a bit too heavy-handed with the way they monetized it and updated it. So I don't know. Hopefully, the Antic are seasoned veterans at this kind of thing. So yeah.
Wasn't there a Jurassic Park one as well?
I was about to say that. There's somebody working on a Jurassic Park one.
A Jurassic Park
Did that
one?
already come out? The Jurassic Park one? I thought it already came out.
I think it's out.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it shows how good it must have been.
Well, I was going to say, if it's out already, I'll be shocked for no other reason that Matt wouldn't be aware of it, because if it's dinosaurs, you'd be all over it like a rat.
Oh, please. Just because all my friends play dinosaur games doesn't mean I'm a massive fan of dinosaur games, but dinosaurs are pretty cool.
Come on, you stick to dinosaur games like shit on Velcro, mate. Come on. Jesus. Anyway.
You ever played Dino D-Day, Matt?
Dino D-Day, no.
There was an awful Half-Life multiplayer game where it's World War II with dinosaurs. It was not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry about the segue.
No, it's all good. So to clarify, the Jurassic Park game thing is actually out, and it's called Jurassic World Alive, and it looks like Pokemon Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, old games, new games. Let's talk some more old games. A shock announcement about a week ago. Diablo. Remember that game? The original? Not Diablo 3, OG Diablo. That actually just got re-released. And it's for sale now, not on Battle.net, despite being a Blizzard game. It's on sale on GOG.com. So this is the first time that this particular game has been able to be purchased digitally. And you can get it right now for $10 US. And it's sold exclusively through GOG.com. You can't even get it on the Blizzard site, which is really weird. So, but it's the same game. There's been no sort of remastering or upgrades or anything like that. But it's introduced all of the things that would come with a modern day port of that game. So it's got Windows 10 compatibility. There's been bug fixes and things like that. But you can also play it in the way that it was originally released. So you can drop it right back down to 20 FPS. With old school sort of matchmaking through BattleNet and everything like that. But otherwise, it's kind of like a true to form sort of re-release of that old game. And it effectively opens the door for a whole bunch of other exclusive deals with GOG for other older Blizzard titles. So they're going to apparently be looking at doing the original Warcraft, sort of Orcs and Humans. They're going to look at doing Warcraft 2 as well. There's no schedule that they've sort of posted yet. And the only comment that I have about all of this is re-release the Lost Vikings, you fucking cowards. That's what I want.
Hell yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Lost Vikings is awesome.
Lost Vikings.
Yeah.
Put it on
Blizzard
Switch.
announces they are finally going to start releasing some good games.
Yeah. Wow. Super harsh. Yeah, no, it was just a weird one out of nowhere. So, if you love Diablo, go and pick up Diablo for super cheap, because why wouldn't you? That sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all the news stuff. Let's dive into our main topic for tonight, which is a fairly timely one given everything that's been going on in the video games world lately. So we're going to have a chat tonight about a topic that I actually mistakenly thought we had covered before, because when I thought about it, I was just like, how could we have not talked about this before? But apparently we have not, which is shocking. We're going to talk about live service games tonight. So, man, how much of a theme has this been over the last, since we've had this incarnation of the team, especially. But looking into 2019, it's not anything that's going to be going away anytime soon. So, so live service games, we're effectively talking about games. Live service games is one word for it. You've probably seen it mentioned as games as a service. It's also called ongoing games. There's various different names for it. I think that I'm getting the feeling that we're starting to get to the point where most people are referring to it as live service games. It seems to be the norm in nomenclature, but I don't know. It's still called a bunch of different things. We understand it basically means a game that has a perpetual live online element to it, which is constantly getting added to or updated or tweaked to increase the longevity of the game and to give the game a experience long past the point of finishing any sort of core packaged story element or base gameplay. So, it's a lot of these online multiplayer games. So we could be talking about things like as far back as Phantasy Star Online or World of Warcraft or Ultima. They're all live service games. The modern incarnations, you're talking about things like you've got No Man's Sky and Division and Destiny and Warframe and all those sorts of things. There's heaps. So I think these days it's almost a surprise when a big title game comes out and it is not a live service game. So it's certainly becoming the norm. So, all right. So the first thing I wanted to sort of throw around for a bit of a discussion is because these games have obviously been happening for a while, and there's lots of different sizes and shapes of them. And some of the biggest titles in the world, Fortnite's a good example, are live service games. But what does a live service game in the modern industry, like as of now, mean to you guys? So what do you think a modern live service game looks like? What are the critical elements? What are the things that make them popular and successful? What does your mind sort of get drawn to when we're talking about it?
Are we talking successful?
Let's talk about elements that you would expect to be in it. We can talk about success as a separate thing, I think, because we'll start to get through. Yeah, we'll start to talk about what things we think have worked and not worked lately. So maybe we'll save success for that. Yeah.
I would almost go as far as to say, like, the main thing they all need is multiplayer. Like, you can't have an online service game that does not have multiplayer. I think that they kind of tried that with Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get the impression they were trying to do the live service thing, but I don't think that works at all with a single player title. I kind of think of any that are a single player title but deliver content that way.
What about No Man's Sky when that first
15
launched?
was close.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky, like No Man's Sky did have the single player thing, but let's be honest, No Man's Sky wasn't good until it got its multiplayer.
True. It was a shared universe though, so it had a different kind of multiplayer with the way that you still kind of touched the same sort of things, but you didn't encounter other people directly. So it's a weird kind of hybrid, and I don't think any other game has done it like that. And probably, you're right, it wasn't successful as a result of that, I don't think. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that with most sort of genres or definitions, there are it's comprised of elements, and like there's no sort of pure definition of game as a service to me. And I think that there are some, like you mentioned Assassin's Creed, there's also like Shadow of Mordor and like Final Fantasy 15, and even like gacha games, which are single player. And I do think they have elements of games as a service. So they're not as deep in the pool as like Fortnite is, but they still have like influence from that space. Whether or not you want to, where you draw a line and say, you know, on this side of the line is games as a service, on this side of the line is stuff with microtransactions and timed events. That's up to you. But yeah, I think that it's tricky to actually pin down exactly where that line is.
When I think of games as a service, I kind of think of the sort of, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. I think of Anthem and sort of the kind of games that are being marketed and sold as, you know, you buy the game now, and then as you play it over the years to come, we have, you know, a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, and you're going to be experiencing, you know, the most amazing game we can put out. So it's kind of like a WoW subscription kind of deal where you sign on for the experience, and then they're promising to deliver to you, you know, content as the years roll by. As opposed to, I think Fortnite kind of, at least with Fortnite, when you first start playing it, that is the whole experience right from the get-go. They may update it and add changes, but I don't, like, for me, when I think of games as a service, I think of almost like them delivering a game that's unfinished, may not be the right word, but sort of a game in its, you know, starter Pokemon form, and then it's eventually going to evolve over time into something that's bigger. That's what I think of when I hear that phrase.
So I think of that as like bad games as a service. That's bad games as a service. But like I think more broadly, like if the game is the difference between like a service and a product, right? So a product, something you buy and you own. The service is something that is like more transient, more like just a sort of time based. And so things like Hearthstone, I consider Hearthstone a game as a service because I'm checking in with it. It's giving expansions. I'm getting daily quests. It's serving me new content regularly. I think of Warframe definitely as a game as a service. And I think with Fortnite, like the Battle Pass side of things, I think makes that very game as a servicey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
100%.
I think it's like the way I kind of see it is games as a service is to TV shows what if I'm going out and buying a video game and I get everything straight away. It's like going out and buying a box copy of Game of Thrones. Whereas if I am playing a game as a service, I'm watching Game of Thrones every week and getting the most recent episode. Is essentially like Adrian said it earlier. Like you have the content treadmill.
Yeah, and the whole point of it is it's designed to get you playing it regularly, as opposed to doing big sort of blocks of it and then not coming back. For a while.
Yeah, that's got to be like the key thing. Surely we can all maybe agree on is that a game as a service is a game that has ongoing changes, ongoing content, and then accompanying that usually ongoing monetization. And it's that ongoing nature of it that makes it service-based.
Yeah, totally. Which is why I think it's a bit different to a game that has subsequent DLC releases to expand it with additional chapters or content. Like, I think that's a totally separate thing, because if you're going to use that kind of definition, then you could be looking at games like The Last of Us as a game as a service, because it had like a DLC addition to it, and that's not what we're talking about. So
in like preparation for this topic, I like sketched out what like a rough kind of evolution of multiplayer like monetization models. And so like the way I just structured it quickly was like originally multiplayer was basically free. You had a multiplayer mode in a game. And then stuff like MMO subscriptions came out, which I think is like the first kind of game as a service. But then like the more single player games or like games like Call of Duty, they still had their multiplayer mode. But then they started adding like map packs, and that was like a kind of one-off subscription, a one-off purchase that you'd make. You own those maps, bam. And then they started doing like online passes where you'd have to pay to actually get access to the multiplayer. And then, of course, microtransactions started coming in, and then loot boxes and battle passes. So there's all these different elements. But I think that like there used to be a separation where games would have a multiplayer mode, and now like the multiplayer is the big thing. That's the main course for the game.
Yeah. And there's some definite pros and cons too. Like I know a lot of people are attracted to games as a service because they want the time investment they sink into the game to be worth something long term. Like, it's not that you just play it and then you forget about it. It continues to add and accumulate value from your purchase by the fact that you can continue to play it for as long as you want. But the flip side of that too is there's a time investment, and a lot of people will deliberately steer away from games as a service because they see it as a much more sort of locked down time investment than playing a self-contained game. So
I have
a
lot of opinions about that.
Go.
As a game designer, there's a conflict with games as a service that makes it a really difficult medium to kind of go and design for, because players want that long-term goals and content, but they also want immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And players don't want to have to grind for content, but if you give them all the content at once, they will just grind through it as quickly as possible. And so I think there's a real balancing act in making a good game as a service that has the sort of content treadmill. You know, we're going to give you this content this week. We're going to give you more of that content next week. And kind of, you know, stretching it out. Like, it's the difference between we're dropping a DLC today and we're dropping a DLC over the course of the next 3 months.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Oh, well, I mean, we're probably at the point now where we can start talking about some actual examples and, you know, trying to keep things as recent as possible to make it relevant. Like, let's start with the ones that we think have actually not done great in recent times. So what do you think are some good examples of recent live service games that have, like, fucked things up for whatever reason? And let's talk about why they've messed up what they've done and why it hasn't hit the mark. So, I'm just going to throw it out there. Let's have a very brief discussion about Anthem, because I think that that's a good recent hot topic. As far as, like, the live service element of the game goes, not necessarily the core elements of the game, because we could talk about that, and we already have talked about that. But when it comes to the ongoing nature of it, what do you think is the problem with Anthem and why it's copped a lot of flack in recent weeks?
There's just not enough in it, I think, is the main issue.
Yeah.
From what I can see. I mean, people signed up expecting, especially with the sort of AAA glitz that it sort of shows, I think people just expected more of it when it first came out. I mean, I think if we're talking about the main issue, I think it's just over-promising and under-delivering. I think that's what it boils down to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So content.
I think content, yep. I think, like, end game content has become a really dirty word. In terms of, like, these sorts of things. I actually have a interesting kind of perspective on having played a lot more Destiny 2 and looking back on things. I'm getting to the point where I'm really wondering, do we need in our games as a service model games to have that, okay, you're going to level up from 1 to 50, and then at the level cap, you're just going to focus on increasing your level, or, you know, via, like, eye level or light level or whatever the game system uses. Like, do we need that anymore? Like, why don't we just have a game where there is no leveling and you're basically just getting better gear? Because that's essentially how the model is working for Destiny, right? Like, that arbitrary number doesn't really mean anything anymore, except for I've completed the campaign. That's literally all that really says now. It has no impact on me. Yeah,
because like, with Warframe, like, all of your gear is you rank up, like, your starting gear within a couple of hours, and that process is the same as ranking up endgame gear. Like, you do have a character level, a mastery rank, but it is so secondary to your gear that you get people who are, like, mastery rank 10 or 12, and they are, like, kitted out with all the best shit, and then you've got somebody who's just grind mastery rank to, like, 20 or something, and they may not be as actually objectively powerful. And it is all just gear based, and right from the start, it's a much flatter progression, but more constant, I think.
Yeah. Because it almost feels like a carryover from those old school games where you would expect to, you know, like, whenever World of Warcraft does a new major update, it's in the form of, we're dropping an expansion pack. And that expansion pack will increase your level. But again, that's only representative of the fact that you've completed the major storyline, because at the end of that, the thing that you care about is your eye level. But I do think that we're kind of moving towards now that kind of system is just going to probably drop away. Like, it sounds like Warframe's basically doing it now, what a lot of games should be doing, right? Like, Destiny hasn't, since Forsaken, had any sort of level increase, and yeah, it's working perfectly fine, and it's doing better now that they have ways for people to catch up. having not played Anthem, like I can't really speak to the amount of content in it, but that's definitely like from the outside. Yes, I would agree with Adrian. Like an amount of content needs to be there to actually keep players coming back. And the numbers that I was hearing out of Anthem was like it had essentially 3 dungeons worth of content that you were essentially repeating over and over again.
Yeah,
to do stuff.
That's exactly what it is.
And each gun has like 3 basic skins that are all just variations, and there are only 2 customizations for each of the different javelins. I think like 2 visual changes. Like I was expecting that game to have like dozens of armor pieces that you could swap in and swap out and create like a really cool custom looking javelin. But there's just none of that in the game.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that Destiny 1 did really well in comparison to Anthem directly is with its exotic weapons and the history and lore surrounding those things. Like Destiny 1 did not do a good job of delivering that story, but you would pick up an exotic weapon and you would be like, this is entirely unique. And this feels like it has story around it, whereas the exotic equivalent weapons that Anthem has are just, this is a reskin of another weapon you've already got. And given that bug that recently got discovered with the level 1 weapon being better than anything else in the game, it doesn't feel good.
No.
That's not a good look.
No.
I think that for me, Sea of Thieves is another game that I'd lump into this category of like bad games as a service launches. I haven't played it, but from talking about it on the podcast and following like stuff online, it seems like that game also launched with like too little content. And I don't know. What you played it a lot, didn't you, Luke?
Yeah, I agree. That was one of the key issues with it, and it was a game that was very much designed around having a group playing like directly with you as well, so you couldn't solo it very well either. Which of course created a problem where people start dropping off from that game, because there's a lack of content. And then as soon as your friends aren't playing, then you aren't playing. So it was kind of a knock-on effect with that. But look, I think in terms of content, one of the things that has been like a common element with what you've all just talked about is I think that like games as a service need good, solid progression systems of some sort. And some of the best examples that you've just gone through, like Warframe being one and Destiny being another one, Destiny 2 especially, is that they actually benefit from having multiple progression systems, like different layers of them. Warframe, you've got all of your individual weapons, you've got all your individual frames, you've got actually progressing across the story content and the galaxy map. And the progression system within Warframe that's probably one of the biggest appeals too is just the collective nature of the content in the game. Like collecting all of your gear and some of the aesthetic elements and things like that. Now, Destiny's kind of got the same thing where they've got the collecting gear sort of aspect and they've got the sort of light level, which is your gear level aspect. They probably have a few less sort of progression systems though, because they kind of get to a point where, there's only really 1 or 2 of them that you really care about. So whereas Warframe, you can keep doing a whole bunch of different ones, and that sometimes can be overwhelming even. You've got your faction rep sort of systems, and I mean World of Warcraft's kind of the same. There's so many different progression systems in that game that it can just get out of control sometimes. Striking a balance between having just the right amount and perhaps too many can be a bit of a struggle too. So, but usually the progression systems function as a way to gate content as well. Like, when we talk about end game content, usually it is end game content because it's locked behind you progressing to a certain point to access it. And I think making some of that content too easy to access can mean that you burn through it too fast. You actually do want to gate some of it behind higher end progression systems, but getting the balance right with not putting it too far into the future is crucial, because if it's stuff that, particularly with the new expansion, and Destiny 2 had this issue with the season of the Black Armory, they made it too hard to get to that stuff. So if you hadn't played the game for a while and there was going to be a gap for you to catch up, then it's a disincentive because it's going to take so much effort to get to the new fun stuff that you don't even bother. And World of Warcraft realized that after a while as well, and that's why they started giving the free character boosts with later expansions, where you could suddenly boost a character immediately up to the level required to enjoy the new content. And I think that was a really clever idea for the same reason. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we're seeing really now with Destiny 2 is they're kind of realizing that you don't have to leave content behind. Like, there's been this habit, like Destiny 1's a really good example. You have a new DLC come out, and all of that content from the last DLC, it's now just filler on your way to get to the new content. And World of Warcraft is incredibly guilty of that shit. Like, when you're leveling up from the start to get to the most recent content in that game, it really does feel like you're going through a lot of zones that are filled with cobwebs and just have been abandoned. Like, there's quests and such you literally cannot finish because the systems that existed around them to enable them to function were reliant upon other players being present, and they're not anymore. And so those systems have just kind of been left behind. Whereas what I'm seeing now with the Destiny 2 and the Season of the Drifter is like all that Black Armory stuff is still relevant. It's still absolutely valuable to go and do that. And the stuff from Forsaken isn't always relevant, but stuff like Spider, you know, as an NPC that you can go and speak to and trade with and everything, he's continually made relevant again by giving you bounties and such that will still benefit you because the game doesn't care about the light level it wants those items to drop at in terms of what the vendor wants them to drop at. It cares about what's your light level and what should we drop them at to make you feel like you're still progressing and achieving new things. And then not only that, but I think there's a lot of value in not only just negating more difficult content to help you progress your item level or your light level or whatever, but also just the idea that you can have content that is, you know, I'm going to unlock something new to do. So Destiny, when they released Forsaken, added a whole bunch of new subclasses and such. And you could unlock those by playing. And I'm still unlocking some of them. And you know, that doesn't become a thing where by unlocking this, I'm going to become better at the game or have more to do. It's just, I can go and run around as this new subclass that I've got and do different things from my other gameplay methods, essentially.
Yeah, totally. I think another good example of a game as a service that really sort of stalled a bit on launch, despite how big it was at the time, because of a lack of progression system, was actually PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds as well. So one of my personal gripes with that game is that it was one of those things, and I guess multiplayer shooters are a little different in this respect because they do focus more on the skill element of the gameplay, is that one of the big turnoffs for me playing that game was that every time I played it, I was basically just playing it to get better at the skill of the game. There was no other measurable method of sort of increasing something within the game infrastructure. There was no gaining of gear. Like, there was some very basic cosmetics, but that was literally it. But there was no ranking up. There was no sort of accumulating any gear or talents or skills or points or anything like that. Like, it was very much that your time sunk into the game was purely for the experience, and if you were enjoying it, great. If you were sinking time into it and not improving, then you didn't really have much to show for the time you're investing. So, you know, at least games that you are terrible at, you can still sink time into and feel like you're getting somewhere with the amount of time that you put in. But this is an example of one where maybe you weren't. So that was a turn-off for me, and I'm assuming a lot of other people too. So, whereas, you know, Fortnite very early on has had the Battle Pass kind of system, which I think is a much better structured way of getting people in to sort of, you know, earn towards a goal, whether it's gear or emotes or whatever. I think, you know, battle passes in general, we've seen those in a few games lately. I think the battle passes are an absolutely ingenious way of monetizing systems in games like that, because they actually force people to be in them regularly playing to get the stuff, as opposed to just sort of grinding them in a big sort of hit. You kind of have to, you know, be in regularly to take advantage of it properly. It's you know, it's deliberately sort of spreading out your time to make best use of it, which I think is very clever. So, and obviously the more people in the game, the more popular it is, you know, the more sort of time they're spending in that virtual shop as well, and maybe more likely to spend on other things. It's a very, very clever approach in my eyes. So, yeah.
The monetization side of things is another interesting spot where it's the difference between doing a live service right or wrong. Because if you end up having cosmetic items that cost a lot of money to go and purchase and they don't really do much, then that will just raise so much ire from players. And quite, like, unless you have a battle pass type system, you are essentially reliant on players spending money in that cosmetic store to actually continue bringing in money to fund development. And so it feels like a lot of games as a service are a huge gamble, and I don't think the developers quite realize just how much of a gamble they are, because, you know, it takes a lot of money to develop a game start to finish, and then to keep on adding more content to it. You need constant money through the door to justify that stuff. And yeah, like I keep on bringing it back to Destiny because that's the game that has really got its hooks into me as far as a games as a service type thing. But having the season pass being something that you can go out and purchase to get you access to a whole bunch of new content is cool and all. But the fact that you can keep on playing the game and get access to some of that content without having to spend more than just the ticket price to buy Forsaken is really good, because it means a lot of those players can still actually get into the game and still play and everything, and they're encouraged to go out and probably buy the season pass if they are enjoying it enough to justify that expense.
Yeah.
I think one thing that makes a really good games as a service is, again, harping on about Warframe, is the community engagement aspect of it. I think Digital Extremes has really should have set the bar really high with how they engage with their community, and it filters through the whole kind of meta of sort of their business structure in the game and how people consume it, and sort of their openness that the developers have with their fans and with their player base. And I think that really just helps strengthen the game and really build like a really great community around the game. And I think that's really important. And I mean, it may be intensified by the fact that Warframe started off as a small kind of game and had like a really committed initial player base. Obviously that expanded with, Destiny 2 hitting a bit of a rocky patch and people moving over. But I think that really kind of will probably set games as a service apart in the future as well.
I definitely agree. And I think like with Warframe, on monetization, like Warframe is a game where, because it has such sort of like good vibes to the community and the development, when I like the money I've spent on Warframe, I felt good about that. I felt like happy to give my money to these people because they deserve it. Whereas like if I'm spending money, if I had spent money on Anthem, I would feel really icky, like because I would have had to have bought the game and then I'm paying extra money for like some cosmetics or something, and that just like I don't like that.
And we talked about it sort of in our segment about reality checks as well. Where the vibe I get, if we're comparing, let's say, Warframe and Anthem, immediately when you jump into Anthem after playing something like Warframe, you can feel the sort of dirty, sort of clawing nature of its microtransactions. You can sort of sense that everything is kind of there for you if you want to pay for it, but it's just kind of a grubby nature. Whereas with Warframe, they're far more transparent, I feel, with the microtransactions in their game, and they just flat out say, you can earn everything in their game. And I mean, their motto on a lot of their marketing is "Ninjas play for free," which is basically saying, if you're good enough at the game, you can play the whole game for free if you really wanted to. And I mean, that I feel like that kind of honesty that comes from the developers really strikes a chord with people, especially now with such a massive saturation of games where people, I think, are starting to feel let down by a lot of sort of developers that are promising so much and then under-delivering. And on the other hand, you've got Digital Extremes that are just giving you what you want, communicating with the fans, and just being really transparent about how their sort of microtransactions work. I think it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, it's a tough market to break into for sure at the moment. There's a lot. Mm-hmm.
Like, the ickiness is something that I feel really, really hardcore whenever I'm playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Like, so often that game feels like a massive grind, and then it's like, hey, you don't have to be grinding in this thing if you just spend a little bit of money.
Actually, and like Assassin's Creed Unity was the worst for that, I felt, because Unity had treasure chests in the game that when you would go up to them and try and open them, it would say, this is a club chest, you need to like pay money to unlock it. So like at least with Odyssey, that stuff you have to actually go to the store to see it, and then you have like the events that give you the currency for the sort of event like games as a service stuff. But having that actual like in-world treasure chest that you had to pay to unlock in Unity was just the worst.
The thing is, though, I wouldn't actually consider any of the Assassin's Creed games as a service. I just think they're poorly monetized single-player experiences with icky add-ins to draw extra cash out of the customer.
Odyssey's really pushing it, though. Like, Odyssey has like daily events, it has weekly shit, it has like ongoing DLC. It's really getting close to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it has quests and such that only pop up during a week. Like, it will have a weekly quest that you can do, and you can earn their currency to buy stuff from their store. by doing that quest and everything. It's essentially the same system as what you have in Destiny with Eververse.
I guess that's the
where you
challenge
can
when you've got
complete
a
stuff.
heavy narrative game, though, like, because you can't possibly write new story content thick and fast enough to keep pumping it into a game to keep people interested if that's what you're relying on. That's really where the multiplayer comes in, because you're kind of relying on the unpredictable nature of other players in a game to write the story content for you in a way. So
they also have like sort of elusive target style things where they'll have like special assassination missions that are only available for a limited amount of time, and that's kind of games as a service, right? Like Hitman 2 feels like that maybe could be classified as games as a service.
I don't know. I probably still wouldn't classify Hitman 2 in the same way. Like,
No?
I think it's time DLC. It's a kind of a different thing, but I don't know. It is such a grey area, and I mean, we're not talking about black and white here. There's definitely shades in between. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah. In terms of like community management, though, like reeling it back a little bit, like we talked about good community management. I think that we need to like World of Warcraft and their community management around that game is so god awful. And it feels like they try really hard to try and fix that. Like they've been trying to be more transparent, but when they're transparent, they come across as condescending. Like the most recent drama that I've been keeping an eye on, because I don't play World of Warcraft anymore at the moment, but I still enjoy hearing about what's happening in the game and everything. They've gone and made some portal rooms in Orgrimmar and Stormwind so that players can get around faster. But in the process, they've removed a whole lot of portals and basically made it there's only one portal to every destination from each expansion. And so, old portals used to have where you could be, okay, I'm going to portal from Stormwind to Ironforge. They're gone now. And when players started saying, like, why is this? Like, why do we actually have less portals? Why is it harder to get around? The explanation from Blizzard sounds really condescending. It doesn't really acknowledge people's concerns. It's more just like, well, we've removed a lot of that stuff because we want to make it feel like you're in a big existent world that you have to actually move around in. And it's like, well, that's great and all, but why, if that was the case, like, why wasn't that the design decision when you were first inserting those portals? So rather than taking away something that benefited us, you were actually making it feel that way from the get-go. But now it's just like, this convenience has been taken away from me. Instead of, it just feels like we don't really care about what your opinion is, because on the design side, we're clearly correct in our design philosophy. And I think that good companies like talking about Warframe, that absolutely gets it right. I think that Bungie does a really good job with Destiny because they have people from the community come in and give feedback about how weapons feel and how DLC feels and everything, and whether or not, the leveling feels good and all that. And they listen to that feedback and they apply that feedback and constantly talk to their community about it. And it fosters a really positive community.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some standout companies that are getting the games as a service sort of model a lot better these days due to the community involvement. Like, I would actually, for all that we were just talking about with the Assassin's Creed stuff, I would still point to Ubisoft as a company that's really learned from its mistakes when it comes to live service games, particularly with things like Rainbow Six Siege and For Honor and the First Division, because they've really managed to turn it around on all three of those big games and get the community on side again by actually listening to their feedback and not giving up on them and continuing to iterate on what's been released already. So, yeah.
I agree with that, but I think that companies no longer have the excuse of getting to turn things around. Like, that's fine. Ubisoft were kind of that; those games came out a couple of years ago. But now, whenever I hear like of a newly launched games as a service trying to turn things around, that's bullshit. Like,
oh, totally.
You should know how to do it better from now on. So when it comes to Fallout 76, if they manage to turn things around, fuck off. I like, that's not good enough. Anthem does the same. Don't like. They've already lost me. Like, if they can turn things around, that doesn't excuse them from how shitty the game was at launch.
Yeah.
So I just, a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that.
I would agree.
It would have to be pretty spectacular for me to come back, I think, when it comes to that kind of being burned.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps that there are some games which I kind of feel that I really want to like. And I think Anthem is one of them, where there are parts of that game that I do really vibe with. So if they manage to turn it around, then maybe I would come back. But you're right about, if it was a game that I didn't really care much about to begin with, then yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd feel the same way.
All of this together are reasons why, leading up to this weekend, I'm actually super excited about the launch of Division 2 because I think this is one of the biggest occasions in recent history where I've looked at a major game as a service that's launching and looking at their plan for what they're putting out. To me, on the surface at least, it looks like they have listened and learned from every criticism they've had in the past with their last shot at it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it looks really promising. They're definitely listening. They've watched what happened with Division 1. They've looked at other games as a service in the current sort of environment. And you can see what they're doing has a purpose and they're not just taking a stab at it. They're seasoned veterans by now. So I will be less forgiving, but I'm also more confident that they know what the fuck they're doing the second time around, which is good. So, yeah.
Yeah. Division 2 feels a lot like Destiny 2 did to Destiny 1. Like, there were a lot of gripes that people had with Destiny 1, especially with regards to the story, that Destiny 2, like, you played through that campaign and it had a satisfying beginning, middle, and end. Like, it was good.
Yeah.
And it feels like they've only gone from strength to strength from there. Like, they are understanding more about the formula and how to do that stuff. So, yeah, I really, really hope that Division 2 sees success that Division 1 probably didn't really have a lot of.
Yeah, well, we'll see very, very soon. It's going to be interesting. All right, well, final question to wrap the topic up. If you all had to point to what you think is the single best example of a live service game done right at the moment, and keeping in mind we're thinking about from launch to current state, not just sort of at one time or another, like the full sort of length of its life, what do you think is the best example of it done right and why, if you had to pick one? So let's go Adrian first, because I suspect I know what you're going to say, but let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, just the amount of times that we bring Warframe up, I think sort of kind of speaks for itself. I mean, I don't think it's perfect. I think it's pretty close to perfect, but that's because I love it so much. But I think that there are still parts of it that are designed to get money out of you. But like Christian said, I mean, they are a business. They have to keep their doors open somehow. And the difference is I feel good about giving them my money. And I can't say that about many other games. Even, games that are one-off purchase, often I'll regret that purchase if I don't enjoy the game. At least with Warframe, you can try before you buy, and you've got nothing to lose in that sense. So, but for me, I think the biggest takeaway is the community engagement. I feel like if you can treat your player base really well, they'll usually forgive just about anything. And by having that open communication, they keep you honest. And I feel like that's what's really lacking with a lot of games as a service, is the kind of like open honesty with the consumer.
Yeah, it's a good call. What about you, Christian? What do you think?
I definitely say Warframe 2, and I really think that the honesty is a big part of that. So one of the huge problems with like Anthem is, like Adrian said, over-promising, under-delivering. Whereas I think when Warframe first came out, it didn't over-promise anything. It was just this like weird free-to-play space ninja game, and they didn't tout it as like the hottest shit in the whole world. And so the fact that they have improved so much over time, that has felt much more like they're not like they're making up for mistakes or broken promises, but they're just making their product better. So they've improved the story, they've improved the graphics, they've improved the core gameplay, they've had an open world. They've done so much to that game, and none of it is making up for broken promises. It's all just making shit better. And it's so good.
Yeah. Matt? It's a tough question, really.
Yeah, no, not because it's a tough question. I already know what my answer is, and I don't like it. That's the problem. So I love
Fallout
Destiny
76.
2. No, God, no. I love Destiny 2, but I think that it's not influential. And I think that if you're looking at what has been the most successful service, games as a service game, it's got to be Fortnite. Like, it has influenced pretty much every single developer out there that is working on a games as a service type title. Not necessarily always in a good way, but their power and influence over the industry right now is just ridiculous. Now, I say that knowing that Apex is bleeding away a lot of their players at the moment, but I think up to this point, like Fortnite has absolutely been the most successful one, if only financially. I'm not a fan of it, but I can at least respect that it has seen a lot of success because they've basically written the model in a big way. Like they have written a lot of the rules that a lot of other studios are now following. So,
Yeah, I think the key thing about Fortnite too is that they've really proven their flexibility when it comes to acting quickly to change elements of the game that are copping flack or just not working. So their ability to, change events on the fly or pull out weapons or items that, have done something unintended at a very rapid response rate has definitely put them in good regard with a lot of the players. So, that's an interesting one. It's a super tough question for me to answer. I think that Destiny 2 is probably one of the most interesting examples to look at from a study perspective, because I think that they have been at both extremes at different times, like with things that have worked spectacularly well and things that haven't. But in every case, they've adjusted and sort of changed their course to kind of match. And I think that they have probably been one of the most sort of useful learning examples as to, the highs and lows of games as a service to sort of watch. Like, you can learn a lot by looking at the entire sort of from beginning to now course that Destiny 2 has charted. But if we're talking about most successful overall, I agree with you on Fortnite, Matt. I think I'll probably have to say Warframe as well, though, because I think for all the reasons that Christian and Adrian mentioned, like there's not been a lot of blemishes in that armor, really. They've done exceedingly well. I think the only thing they've been lacking at is that they took so long to actually get the groundswell behind them to become as popular as they are now. Like that's probably the biggest failing, is that they weren't bigger sooner. But I mean, maybe part of the journey that they've been on to get to this point is because they weren't. So that's actually prompted them to do things a bit differently and not care so much about trying to bleed profits out of their audience and instead do all the right things, because they're kind of the underdog in the situation. It's been a strength rather than a weakness. So, I don't know. I think Warframe's probably the best all-round example. I actually really struggle to think of any others. Fortnite's very good at doing a single particular thing, but Warframe's done a lot of different things. So they're probably a bit more all-round a success if I had to judge. So, yeah. Tricky.
You heard it here first, everyone. The Warcrack addicts all choose Warcrack.
Well, yeah, I have to really think about it, though. And, like, honestly, if I was saying hand over heart, out of all of the games we've talked about tonight, Warframe is not my favourite game out of all of them. But I do think it's the most successful game as a service game. So...
You say that. I know you don't mean it.
No, look, I love Warframe. At the moment, I'm definitely enjoying playing Destiny 2 more, and that may be a temporary thing because there's certain content in that game that I'm, at this present point in time, enjoying more than Warframe. But by the same token, I can recognise that Warframe still does a lot of things better, even though I'm physically enjoying playing Destiny 2 more right now, if that makes sense. You can still have your flavours of the month, and that can dictate what you enjoy, but you can appreciate the art of the way that a company does certain things from afar, even if you're not actively playing the game right at this moment. So...
Totally agree.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Absolutely. That's why I had to choose Fortnite.
Yep. Yeah, we do these things sometimes, even though our hearts lead us elsewhere. Yep.
I will be going off from this podcast and hating myself for the next few days.
Nice.
Hey, man, I played Fortnite. It's good. Yeah, I like Fortnite.
It's good fun. Like, I mean, hey, Apex could be up there soon. It's just probably way too early to tell. So, yeah, we just don't know. Yeah. All right. Well,
I want to make a closing point on games as a service. Just something that we haven't touched yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's one tragedy about games as a service that is not getting enough attention, and that we won't feel until years from now, and that's the issue of game preservation. So when I have kids, I could sit them down and they can play Super Mario World or Super Metroid, but you're not going to be able to sit your kid down and have them play Destiny 1 or The Division 1 or something, because those games won't exist anymore. Because being server-based and being update-based, these games aren't going to be around forever. And if they are, they're going to be in a completely different state to how they were when they launched. But frankly, none of them are going to last forever. And I think that sucks, because I think that games as an art form, I like the idea of them like being long-lasting, and like, you can watch a silent film from 100 years ago and you won't be able to do that with games as a service. And I think that sucks.
Yeah.
I think... To really quickly extend on that, like, I think that with a lot of games as a service, the context in which they exist in is super important for the time. And it's why, like, World of Warcraft Classic being announced and everything, I know that game's not going to go well. There's going to be a lot of people that remember that because of the nostalgia about it and the good times they had with friends and everything. But that's such a key part of these games as a service that, I don't think that even if I were to go back and play Destiny 1 now, which I still can, I wouldn't enjoy it as much, because the thing that made that game so much fun was playing with friends.
Yeah. It's still a good game though, Matt. I played it recently. Yeah. It's still really freaking good. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, the multiplayer aspect definitely does add something that you can't, capture in a bottle forever, which is a bit of a shame. So,
I do hope, though, that we do see them kind of come back in a similar way to World of Warcraft Classic does, but I couldn't see them being as popular as they were.
No, it's and what is the value of nostalgia versus things that you could be playing in the future at those times anyway? There might be much better things available. So it's a shame, but I don't know. Look, there's so many games around these days that you can probably point to other things to sort of give people a good experience and not have to rely on all the games as a service. But there are a lot of them these days. So very good point though, Christian. I agree. All right, well, let's wrap it there. I think it's, again, another topic we could quite easily talk at further length about, but we got to wrap things up at some point. So quick, round table. What are you guys playing over the next week? Adrian, go.
Warframe.
All right, cool. Why bother? Christian?
Also, I'm trying to finish Sunset Overdrive because I bought it and I really like it, and I did dip back into it this past week, so I do want to get back in there and finish that. So I'll be playing that too.
Sweet. All right. Christian, what about you?
I actually don't know. I'm not sure, but I definitely will be keeping an eye out for the Google announcement thing, because that'll be happening next Tuesday, so we can talk about it next podcast.
Yeah.
But for as far as games I'm playing, Hearthstone.
Yeah. All right. Matt, what are your plans?
Destiny 2, I've been sick, so I haven't been streaming. I apologize, everyone, but I'll probably get back into Fallout 1 and do some more streaming of that later on in the week. But yeah, definitely a lot more Destiny 2. Maybe some Sims. I mentioned it last week and I never got around to it.
Very cool. All right, well, lots of Division 2 from me. Expect a big chat about that next week. I'm looking forward to diving in and playing a bunch. And as it happens, my lovely wife is heading overseas this weekend, so the timing could not be better. So, all right. Anyway, that is it for tonight. If you want to get in touch with us, all the usual methods, mail at partyloaded.com, at Party Loaded Show on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. Just look for Party Loaded. And all of the hub of activity going on at channelendgame.com, as well as our other links to YouTube and Twitch. So, thanks for hanging out. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. I hope you are enjoying your live service games. Send us in some thoughts on yours if there's anything that could add to the conversation. But apart from that, stay frosty. We'll chat to you again in 7 days' time. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Good night.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.